Hey, so, you guys smell that? Carried through the comms, the voice belonged to Corporal Blevins. From his sarcophagus of a driver's seat, he hadn't seen the sky in 14 days. Smell what, Blev? The piss jug you're too lazy to empty? Or the fact that we're marinating in our own sweat? The reply that came from Sergeant Avery was flat, scraped raw by fatigue. He was the tank commander. His was the lid of the coffin, the only one who could, theoretically, pry it open. No, smartass! Not us! Them! Avery keyed the comms again, his thumb resting on the warm plastic switch. Cole, you got eyes? Specialist Cole, the gunner, didn't answer immediately. He was the reserved type. His world had shrunk to the eyepiece of the gunner's primary sight, filled with shifting thermal signatures. The GPS was his god, the thermal imaging system his prophet. He saw the world in gradients of white and black, a ghostly mismatch of a dead city. Negative, TC. Cole's voice was a low rumble, the calmest thing in their still world. No movement. Thermals are dead. Just ambient heat. The fires are still going over on 5th Street. That and the pavement's still hot from yesterday's sun. He almost said flyover. They'd learned not to call it that. Flyovers were for air shows. What the aliens did was something else entirely. A scouring of the sky that left glass streets and melted cars in its wake. Copy that. Another voice, younger, laced with a tremor he tried to hide. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just a dead one cooking somewhere. Private First Class Manny Delgado, the loader. He was crammed into the left side of the turret, surrounded by the deadly cylinders of their remaining ammunition. 21 rounds total, including 6 M829A4 armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot rounds, their depleted uranium cores promising a very bad day for anything they hit. 10 M1028 canister rounds, essentially turning their 120mm smoothbore cannon into a city block-sized shotgun. 5 M830A1 heat rounds, high explosive anti-tank. Good for buildings, good for big targets. They were a $2 million, 68-ton paperweight with a very, very big gun. And a broken track. The right track of the tank was gone. Shredded 2 weeks ago during the initial push. A weirdly biological mine had unspooled a latticework of crystalline filaments that had sliced through the composite, rubber and steel of the track pads like they were butter. The beast, their beast, Warpig, was hobbled. Immobilized in the intersection of Kinsley and Broad, a monument to a failed offensive. Command's orders were simple, delivered through crackling, intermittent bursts over the SyncGuards radio. 1-9 Bravo, this is Warlock. Maintain position. QRF has been marshaled to the port. I say again, a quick reaction force has been organized. Sit tight. Warlock out. Blevins cackled. That was 12 days ago. The radio had gone silent 3 days after that. The auxiliary power unit, the APU, sipped their remaining diesel, a quiet hum in the back of the tank that kept the batteries charged and the electronics from dying. It was the only thing that separated them from being a tomb. I'm telling you, I smell it, Blevins insisted. It's that cinnamon and burnt hair smell, the smell they make when they're close. Avery leaned forward, pressing his face against the cold steel of his commander's cupola. His own thermal viewer, the Scifi, the commander's independent thermal viewer, offered a panoramic view of their prison. A dead city. Wrecked cars formed a makeshift barrier around them, a courtesy of the tank's final lurching death throes. A clothing store, Sophia's boutique, had its windows blown out. mannequins scattered on the sidewalk like frozen plastic corpses. And one of them, a female form in a summer dress, was missing its head. Avery found that grimly appropriate. He swiveled the Scifi, the hydraulics whining softly. He scanned the rooftops, the alleyways, the gaping mouths of shattered office building windows. Nothing. Just the wind, carrying dust and the distant, almost subliminal hum of something. The hive. Miles away, but they could all feel it. A thrumming in their bones. A pressure behind the eyes. "All right, let's talk rations," Avery said, changing the subject. He wasn't ignoring Blevins, he was managing morale. They were down to their last case of MREs. Menu 17, beef stew, the one everyone hated. "We can have a whole one today," he offered, "to celebrate, Tuesday." "It's Friday, Sarge," Manny said softly. "Friday then, even better." A sudden, sharp click. Every man in the tank froze. It wasn't a sound from inside. It came from the outside, sharp and clear. It was the sound of something hard and pointed tapping on metal. Click, click, clack. Cole's voice was ice. "TC, I have contact, left flank, on the wreck of the garbage truck." Avery swung the Scifi. His blood ran cold. It was there. A shimmering outline in the thermal scope, hotter than the background. It was perched on the overturned garbage truck, maybe 50 meters away. They called them stalkers. It was humanoid, only in the loosest sense. Long, digitigrade legs ending in hooked claws, a slender torso, and 2 sets of arms. The upper set were long and scythe-like, the lower set smaller, more manipulative. Its head was a smooth, chitinous teardrop shape that swiveled with an insectoid jerkiness. It was tapping one of its sickle-like claws on the truck's chassis. Curious. "Just one?" Avery whispered into the comm. "Just one," Cole confirmed. "Range 48 meters. I don't know what it's doing. Just looking." "Manny," Avery said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Low Sabo." "Sabo up," came the reply, followed by the heavy, greasy clunk of the breech block opening, the smell of cordite and ozone from the last shot they'd fired days ago, and then the solid, reassuring thud of the new round being seated. "Up." "Gunner, you have the shot?" "I can hit it." "Sarge, are we sure? The noise." He had a point. Firing the main gun was like setting off a bomb. It would announce their exact position to everything within a 5-mile radius. They had survived this long by being a rock. A silent, unmoving, uninteresting rock. The stalker cocked his head. It looked directly at the tank. There was no way it could see them, not through the armor. But it knew. "It knows," Blevins breathed over the comms, as if reading Avery's mind. The thing unfolded itself from its crouch. It moved with a liquid grace that was both beautiful and utterly terrifying. It hopped off the garbage truck, landing on the asphalt with a soft thud. It took a step towards them. Then another. "Fuck it," Avery said. "Cole, take the shot." "On the way." Cole's world narrowed to the reticle in his sight. He centered the glowing crosshairs on the stalker's torso. He didn't think about what it was. He didn't think about the biology, the civilization that built it, whether it had a family. He thought about lead, angles, and windage. His finger tightened on the butterfly trigger. A deafening roar that was felt as much as heard. A physical punch of sound that vibrated through the floor plates and into their bones. The entire 68-ton vehicle rocked back on its suspension. the air filled with a sharp smell of burnt propellant. For a fraction of a second, the inside of the turret was illuminated by the flash from the breach, a hellish orange glow that threw their faces into stark demonic relief. Through the GPS, Cole watched the M829A4 round, a sliver of depleted uranium travelling at nearly a mile per second, cross the 50-metre gap in an eye blink. The Sabo round was a kinetic energy weapon, delivered to hit, not explode. The Stalker was shredded into a cloud of pink mist and atomized biomass. The round, carrying an impossible amount of energy, struck it mid-torso and turned everything solid into something liquid and gaseous. Chunks of chitin, the consistency of wet ceramic, pattered against the storefronts nearby. A viscous slurry that had once been alien organs painted a 10-foot-long smear of the asphalt. Silence descended again, heavier than before. The only sound was the high-pitched whine in their ears and the frantic metallic ticking of the calling cannon barrel. "Holy shit," Manny whispered, his voice trembling. He was already reaching for the handle to eject the spent casing, his hands moving on pure muscle memory. The hot, smoking shell clattered onto the floor. "Did you see that? It just came apart." "Good hit, Cole," Avery said, his own voice tight. "Everybody sound off. Gun is good. Load is good, Sarge." A pause. "Blevins?" "Peachy," the driver's voice crackled. "Just peachy. Won't be right up. Hey, you think they heard that?" It was a stupid question, meant to be ironic, but it hung in the air. They had just rung the dinner bell. Avery scanned frantically with the Citiv. He half expected a tide of them to pour out of the alleys, but there was nothing. Just the silence. The city didn't seem to care. "All right," Avery said, forcing a calm he didn't feel. "Back on watch. 50% alert. Cole, you and I will take first shift. Manny, Blevins, get some rack time." "I can't sleep, Sarge," Manny said. His voice was small. Avery understood. The adrenaline was afire in their veins. He keyed the private comm channel to Manny's headset. "Hey, look at me." Manny looked up towards the turret ring, as if he could see Avery through the steel. "You did good, kid. You loaded the round, you did your job. We're alive because of it. Now, close your eyes. Even if you don't sleep, just rest your eyes. That's an order." "Yes, Sergeant." Manny leaned his head back against the turret wall. He pulled a small, tarnished silver locket from under his uniform. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. He knew the picture inside by heart. His little sister, smiling, a gap in her teeth. He'd sent most of his pay home for her braces. He wondered if she ever got them. He wondered if there was a home to send pay to anymore. The hours crawled by. The silence outside was more unnerving than any noise. It was a loaded silence, full of potential. Blevins, despite his protests, had fallen into a snoring sleep in his cramped seat. Avery and Cole kept their vigil, their communication reduced to grunts and single-word observations. "Heat bloom, Sector 4, rooftop. Just a vent, dissipating." "Copy." It was during a moment of this tense quiet that they saw him. A new thermal signature. Small. Man-shaped. "TC?" Cole's voice was sharp. "Civilian, 100 meters. Corner of Kinsley and 3rd. He's running." Avery slewed the Citiv and zoomed in. Cole was right. It was a man, thin, wearing ragged clothes. He was stumbling, falling, picking himself up again. He was running down the middle of the street, right out in the open. A suicidal act. "What the hell is he doing?" Avery muttered. "He's not alone," Cole said, his voice grim. Avery adjusted his focus. 3 more signatures. The familiar, terrifying forms of stalkers had emerged from an alleyway behind the man. They weren't running. They were pacing him, flanking him, herding him. They were hunting for sport. Jesus Christ! Blevins, now awake, said over the comm. He must have been listening. They're playing with him. The man fell again, and this time he didn't get up. He just lay on the asphalt, sobbing. The stalkers slowed their advance, moving in a tightening circle. Sarge. Manny's voice was pleading. We can't, We can't, Avery agreed, but his tone was different. It was the cold, hard voice of command. We engage, we give away our position for good. We fire the cokes, they'll swarm us. We fire the main gun, and that big one, the one we saw on the bridge last week, will come for us. We do nothing. That's the order. We sit tight. The order, Blevins spat. The order comes from a guy who's probably sipping coffee on a destroyer halfway to Hawaii by now. Look at him! The man on the street had rolled over. He was looking in their direction. He couldn't see them, not really, but he was looking at the biggest, most solid thing in the intersection. A symbol of the army that was supposed to protect him. He was looking at them for help. One of the stalkers darted forward. It didn't use its big scythes. It used one of its smaller, more dexterous hands, and casually backhanded the man across the face. The hit was dismissive, almost playful, but it snapped the man's head to the side with a sickening crack. Something broke in Avery. 14 days of sitting. 14 days of listening to his men slowly lose hope. 14 days of being a target in a can. Fuck it, Avery said. He said it quietly, a prayer of damnation. Fuck it all. He flipped a switch on his control panel, the one that overrode the gunner's controls. Blevins, get on the cokes. Manny, load canister. Sarge? Manny's voice was a mix of terror and elation. You heard me. Load canister, now. The breach clunked open and shut again. Up! Blevins, on my mark you stitch the street in front of him. Suppress. Don't try to hit them. Just scare them. Make them duck. Cole, I have the gun. I'm going to do this myself. Avery's hands flew across his panel. He was the commander, but he'd come up as a gunner. You never forgot. He laid the reticule of his own sight just to the side of the huddled group. A canister round was a low-velocity shot. You had to lead it, even at this range. Blevins, mark! The 7.62mm coaxial machine gun erupted, a ripping metallic snarl that was shockingly loud in the quiet street. Tracers, visible even in the daytime, drew red, fiery lines across the asphalt, kicking up sparks and chunks of pavement just in front of the stalkers. The aliens, surprised, flinched back. It was all the opening Avery needed. Fire! He yelled to himself, and squeezed the trigger. The Abrams bucked again, but this time the sound was different. Not a sharp crack, but a deep, throaty boom. The M1028 canister round flew apart, 20 meters from the muzzle, releasing a cloud of over 1,000 tungsten balls, each the size of a marble, travelling at lethal velocity. It wasn't a precision strike. It was an act of annihilation. The entire area where the stalkers had been standing was shredded. The aliens were turned into a red mist, vaporized by 1,000 tiny hammers. The side of a building was pockmarked as if by a hailstorm of meteors. A fire hydrant, caught in the edge of the pattern, burst open, sending a pathetic, gushing stream of brown water into the street. Move! Avery screamed into the main comm. Manny, get the hatch! Get him! This was the insane part of the plan. The part he hadn't thought through. Manny, without a second's hesitation, cranked the loader's hatch open, exposing himself to the dead city. The reek of cinnamon and burnt hair, now mixed with the coppery smell of alien blood, flooded the tank. Blevins, cover him! Blevins was firing the cokes in short, controlled bursts, stitching the alleyways and rooftops just in case. Manny, small and wiry, scrambled out of the hatch and onto the tank's turret. He jumped the 5 feet to the ground, his combat boots crunching on shattered pavement. He sprinted towards the man. "Come on! Come on, get up!" he screamed, his voice raw. He grabbed the man under the arms and started hauling him backwards. The man was dead weight, groaning, his face a mask of blood. "He's not moving fast enough," Cole shouted, his voice tense. He was scanning, watching for retaliation. "Sarge, I think you really pissed him off." Avery didn't need Cole to tell him that. A new sound was starting, a deep resonant thrumming that was making the very air vibrate. It wasn't the hive. It was closer. Much closer. "Manny, leave him!" Avery ordered, his voice cracking. "No!" Manny shouted back, still dragging the man. He was almost there. 10 feet. 5. Blevins laid on the trigger of the cokes, the barrel starting to glow a smoky, dull red. Manny, with a final desperate heave, got the man to the side of the tank. Avery had already popped his own hatch. He and Blevins reached down, grabbing the civilian's arms, while Manny pushed from below. They hauled the bloody, limp body into the commander's station, bundling him in a heap on the floor behind Avery. "Get him, Manny!" Manny scrambled back onto the tank, slid through his hatch and slammed it shut, sealing them back in their steel bubble. The civilian was moaning. He was an older man, maybe in his 50s. His leg was bent at an angle that was profoundly wrong, the bone sticking out of his pants in a mess of blood and fabric. A compound fracture. He was mumbling something in a language Avery didn't recognize. Polish, maybe? "Sarge." Cole's voice was barely a whisper. "Look down Broad Street." Avery put his eye to the CTIV. His heart stopped. A block away, something was coming. It was huge. This was no stalker. It was the thing they'd seen on the bridge, the thing they'd all been pretending wasn't real. A juggernaut. It was easily 30 feet tall, a walking fortress of dark, iridescent chitin and muscle. It moved with a slow, ponderous certainty, each footstep shaking the ground, causing dust to rain down from the Abrams ceiling. It had multiple limbs, some ending in what looked like plasma cannons, others in massive clawed fists. It paid no attention to the wrecked cars, simply walking over them, crushing them like tin cans with a deafening screech of tortured metal. It was coming for them. They had rung the dinner bell, and the hungriest thing in the whole damn city had heard it. The injured civilian in the turret began to scream, a high, thin sound of pure terror. Outside, the juggernaut raised one of its cannon arms. A sickly green light began to build at the tip. "Brace," Avery whispered. It was the only word he could manage. A tremendous metallic gong echoed through the hull as something impossibly heavy struck the front glacis plate. It wasn't a penetrating hit, but the kinetic force alone was staggering. The entire tank was shoved backwards several inches. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into absolute darkness, broken only by a dim red glow of a few emergency indicators. A shower of sparks rained down from a damaged conduit. The APU sputtered, coughed and died, and the sudden silence was more terrifying than any noise. The wet, choked gurgle from the civilian sprawled on the turret floor, a sound that spoke of lungs filling with blood. Over the comm, Blevins was shouting, his voice shrill with panic. "We're dead! Oh God, we're dead!" Avery ignored him. He was trying to get the backup systems online. His hands, slick with sweat, fumbled with the circuit breakers. Nothing. Then came the new sound, a low, scraping, grinding noise. From the roof. It was on top of them. Cole's voice for the first time held a note of genuine, unadulterated fear. "Sarge, it's trying to peel us open." The scraping intensified. The sound of alien claws tearing at the composite armor of the turret hatch, searching for a purchase. The 68-ton paperweight had become a can of food, and something very, very big was trying to get in. The lights went out. Darkness. Absolute and suffocating. The world inside Warpig shrank to the dimensions of a coffin, packed with 4 terrified men and 1 dying one. The relative silence that befell the men was nauseous. The high, terrified keening of Blevins over the internal comms. "It's on us! It's on the goddamn roof!" The frantic animal scratching from directly above them. Not the random scrape of a curious claw anymore. This was methodical. A determined grinding sound like a giant diamond drill biting into steel. It was searching for a seam. And beneath it all, the frantic, ragged drumming of 4 hearts. "Shut up!" Avery's voice roared through the comms, a blade of pure command cutting through the panic. "Blevin, shut your goddamn mouth or I will come down there and shut it for you. Sound off. Damage report. Now!" There was a choked sob from the driver's compartment, then, "Comms are shot. Main power is dead. I can't see a thing, Sarge. It's dark." "No shit, it's dark." Avery bit back, his hands flying across his control panel by touch alone. He knew every switch, every breaker, by heart. He flipped the master breaker for the main battery, then the backup. Nothing. The hit, while not penetrating, must have sent a shockwave through the hull that fried every delicate circuit. They were electrically dead. A $2 million rock. "Cole? Manny?" "Gunner's here." Cole's voice was unnervingly steady, a low anchor in the swirling chaos. "All my systems are black. I'm blind, TC." Loader's here," Manny stammered. A faint rustling came from his position. He was with the civilian. "Sarge, the man, I don't think he's breathing anymore." The gurgling sound had stopped. Avery felt a cold knot tighten in his gut. He had traded his crew's lives for a dead man. The thought was a shard of ice in his mind. He couldn't let it freeze him. "Leave him," Avery ordered, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "He's gone. Focus on the problem we have right now." The grinding from above intensified, followed by a high-pitched metallic shriek that vibrated through their teeth. It was the sound of the turret's armor beginning to fail. "It's getting through," Blevins wailed. "It's going to peel us open like a can of sardines." "Not yet, it's not," Avery said, his mind racing, sifting through a decade of training, through manuals he'd memorized, through contingencies for situations that were supposed to be impossible. Electrical failure was one thing. A 30-foot-tall alien trying to get in was another. There had to be a way. There was always a manual override. For everything. The gun couldn't be fired. The Coax was dead. But the turret could be moved. "Cole, Manny, the hand cranks," Avery said. A moment of silence. The idea was insane. The turret weighed over 20 tons. The manual traverse and elevation cranks were a legacy system, a last-ditch feature for minor adjustments, not for combat maneuvering. Using them was a slow, back-breaking agony. "Sarge?" Manny's voice was incredulous. "That'll take forever." "We don't need forever," Avery said, a desperate, brilliant plan blooming in the darkness. "We just need to move it a few feet. Cole, you're on the traverse. Manny, you're on elevation with me. Blevins, you stay put and keep your mouth shut. Just listen." The plan was this. They were parked next to the corner of a 5-story brick building, the Sophia's boutique. The juggernaut was centered on their turret. If they could rotate the turret, just a few degrees to the right, they could use the building as a lever. They could scrape the monster off their roof. Or, if they were lucky, crush one of his limbs between 20 tons of steel and 100 tons of brick and mortar. "Okay," Cole said. Just one word, but in it Avery heard acceptance. He heard trust. "Manny?" Yeah, Sarge. The cranks." Avery felt around in the darkness for the traverse clutch lever, a heavy steel handle near the floor. He yanked it hard, disengaging the dead hydraulics motors from the turret ring gear. A heavy thunk echoed in the compartment. "It's disengaged. Go!" More fumbling in the dark. The sound of Cole finding the traverse crank, a fold-out handle that slotted into a socket near his knee. The sound of Manny finding the elevation crank. Avery found the commander's override crank next to his own seat. "Okay," Cole grunted, his voice already strained. "On 3. 1, 2, 3!" A symphony of groans. The groans of tired men, and the deeper, more profound groan of the massive turret ring, forced to move by nothing more than muscle and steel gears. Avery put his own back into the elevation crank, his muscles screaming in protest. It was like trying to turn a building with a screwdriver. Above them, the alien seemed to notice a shift. The grinding stopped. It was replaced by a series of heavy, rhythmic thuds. It was trying to smash its way in now. Each impact shook the hull, rattling their bones. "It's not moving," Manny gasped, his breath coming in ragged pants. "It is," Avery grunted back, sweat stinging his eyes. "An inch. I felt it move an inch. Again. Push!" They threw their weight into the cranks, their movements synchronized by desperation. The darkness was a strange blessing. They couldn't see the futility of their task. They could only feel the resistance, hear the groaning of the steel and the thunderous impacts from above. Scrape! A new sound. The edge of the turret's bustle rack, the storage basket on the back, was making contact with the brick wall of the boutique. "Keep going!" Avery yelled, his voice hoarse. "It's working!" An alien shriek of fury erupted from directly above them. The Juggernaut knew what they were doing. A massive clawed limb slammed down on the turret's side, trying to arrest the movement. The impact was deafening, and the tank tilted precariously on its suspension. For a heart-stopping second, Avery thought they were going to roll. "Don't stop!" Cole bellowed. The sound ripped from his lungs. He was putting everything he had into the traverse crank, his knuckles surely bloody and raw in the dark. The grinding of the bustle rack against the brick wall became a roar. Chunks of masonry and steel rained down on the street outside. The Juggernaut shrieked again, a sound of pain this time, not just rage. They had caught its arm. "Now!" Avery yelled. "Back the other way! Reverse!" With a synchronized groan of effort, they threw their weight in the opposite direction, reversing the cranks. The turret swung back to the left. The Juggernaut's arm, trapped between the immovable building and the irresistible force of the turret, was caught. There was a sound that Avery would hear in his nightmares for the rest of his life. It was not a snap of bone, but the wet, fibrous cracking sound of something immensely strong being twisted past its breaking point. Like 1,000 giant stalks of celery being snapped at once. It was followed by a piercing high-frequency scream that seemed to bypass their ears and bore directly into their brains. The immense weight on the roof vanished. With a final deafening crash of metal and chitin, the Juggernaut fell from the tank, landing in a heap on the street to their right. Silence. No one spoke. The only sound was their own ragged, desperate breathing, echoing in the hot, dark confines of the turret. "Did we?" Blevins whispered, his voice full of awe. "Did we do it?" Before Avery could answer, the street outside was illuminated by a blinding, sickly green light. The light poured in through the vision blocks, casting long, distorted shadows inside the compartment. Cole, his face pressed against his own vision block, delivered the news in a dead, flat voice. "It's on the ground. It's getting up. Its left arm is gone, just a mangled stump, and it is looking right at us. Sarge, the cannon on its other arm. It's glowing." They had won the battle. They had gotten the monster off their roof, but in doing so, they had traded a drawn-out death for a very, very quick one. They were still a dead tank, a rock in the middle of the road, and they had just created a very angry, one-armed juggernaut with a plasma cannon, now standing at point-blank range. Avery leaned his forehead against the cold steel of his cupola. He didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. He just listened to the rising hum of the alien weapon, the sound of their own imminent vaporization. He had saved a man who was already dead, and he had doomed the 3 men who were still alive. The irony was so bitter it tasted like ash in his mouth. He closed his eyes and waited for the light. In that frozen eternal second, Avery's mind, instead of shutting down, went into overdrive. He saw it all. The dead civilian on the floor, the glowing cannon, the juggernaut braced and ready, and beside it, the deep structural wounds they had torn into the corner of the Sophia's boutique. A desperate, utterly insane thought ignited in the panic-stricken darkness of his mind. A plan born of pure, distilled hopelessness. "Manny!" Avery's voice was a raw bark, devoid of hope, but sharp with command. "Heat round! Give me a heat round, now!" "Sarge, what for?" Manny cried out, his voice cracking. "The gun's dead!" "We're not going to shoot it, you idiot. We're going to use it. Pop the loader's hatch. Get ready to push it out." The order was so monumentally stupid, so contrary to every regulation ever written, that for a second nobody moved. They were going to open the hatch to the 30-foot-tall alien that was about to kill them. The hum from outside grew louder. The green light intensified. "Cole!" Avery yelled, his voice straining. "Get your M4! Get up here! You're going to shoot the round!" That's when they understood. It wasn't a plan. It was a suicide pact with a sliver of a chance. A lottery ticket bought with their own lives. Cole, the unflappable gunner, didn't question it. He simply said, "Roger!" And the sounds of him unstrapping his carbine from its rack were sharp and clear in the tense silence. "Manny, move!" The command broke Manny's paralysis. He was the loader. His hands knew the ammo rack better than his own face. He fumbled in the dark, his fingers sliding over the smooth, cool casings of the sabot rounds until he found it. The M830A1 high-explosive anti-tank round. It was heavier than the sabots, thick and brutish. 60 pounds of steel, copper, and Composition B explosive. He wrapped his arms around it, his muscles straining as he lifted it from the rack. It was like hugging a bomb, which it was. I got it, he grunted, stumbling in the dark, the dead weight of the shell throwing him off balance. Above them, Cole scrambled up from his seat, his M4 held tight. "I'm at the hatch, Sarge. Can't see a thing." "You don't have to see, you just have to hit it," Avery yelled. "Manny, get the crank. Pop the hatch. Just enough to shove the round out." The alien cannon whined, reaching its crescendo. Any second now. With a grunt, Manny spun the manual crank for the loader's hatch. The heavy steel plate lifted a few inches with a groan of protest, letting in a blinding slice of green light. The sound of the charging weapon flooded the tank, rattling against their eardrums. "I'm at the hatch!" Manny screamed over the noise, wrestling the heavy shell into the opening. It's too heavy!" Cole was there. He grabbed the top of the shell, his knuckles scraping against the hatch opening. Together, they manhandled the deadly cylinder, positioning it in the gap. "It's looking at us!" Blevins shrieked from the driver's seat. For his own tiny periscope, he had a direct view. "The hatch! It saw the hatch move!" The juggernaut, which had been focused on the turret front, began to turn its torso. The glowing cannon started to swivel towards the loader's hatch. "Now!" Avery roared. "Shove it out!" With a final desperate heave, Manny and Cole pushed the heat round out of the hatch. It fell end over end, clattering onto the street below. It landed on its side on the broken pavement, a dull inner cylinder lying directly at the base of the wounded building, just feet from the juggernaut's massive insectoid legs. "Cole, shoot it! Shoot the damn thing!" Cole leaned out of the tiny opening, his cheek pressed against the stock of his M4. He couldn't see the sights. He couldn't aim. He just pointed the barrel down and squeezed the trigger. Click. The sound was the loudest thing Avery had ever heard. A misfire. The round hadn't seated properly. The Juggernaut's cannon was almost facing them. The green light pulsed, a malevolent heartbeat. Cole didn't hesitate. He pulled the charging handle, ejecting the dud round in a single fluid motion born of endless drills. The brass casing bounced off the turret roof and vanished. He let the bolt slam forward, chambering a new round. He fired again. A 3-round burst. The M4 barked, its frantic high-pitched cracks a pathetic counterpoint to the alien weapon's deep hum. For a moment, nothing happened. The shell just lay there, the Juggernaut's cannon steadied on their hatch. Avery squeezed his eyes shut. We failed. A brilliant, white-hot flash from the ground. One of Cole's 5.56mm rounds had, by a miracle of God or sheer dumb luck, struck the absurdly sensitive piezoelectric fuse in the nose of the heat round. The M830A1 detonated. The shaped charge focused the entirety of the blast into a single cohesive jet of molten copper, a needle of incandescent plasma, travelling at over 20,000 feet per second. It wasn't aimed at the Juggernaut. It was aimed at the building. The molten jet struck the base of the brickwork, not with a boom, but with a hiss. It punched through the first layer of bricks, as if they were water. It vaporized mortar. It superheated the internal support beams, turning solid steel into something soft and pliable. The building did not explode. For a split second, there was a terrible silence. Then a groan. A deep, resonant groan as 100 years of brick and steel surrendered to gravity. The entire corner of the Sophia's boutique, from the ground floor to the roof, sagged inwards. Cracks shot up the facade like lightning in reverse. Then, with a sound like a mountain breaking in half, the building began to collapse. The Juggernaut, his cannon still glowing, turned its head upwards, a gesture of what might have been surprise. It had no time to move. Tons of brick, steel I-beams, plaster, and glass descended upon it in a slow-motion avalanche. The world inside the Abrams became a percussive nightmare. Debris hammered against the turret roof like 1,000 sledgehammers. The tank rocked violently, throwing the men against the hard steel walls. The vision blocks went black as they were buried. Dust, thick and choking, poured in through the open hatch, instantly filling the compartment with an impenetrable fog. The roar was absolute, a physical force that crushed the air from their lungs. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Replaced by a silence that was even more profound than before. A dead silence. The silence of the tomb. Avery coughed, his lungs on fire. The air was unbreathable, a thick soup of dust and pulverized brick. He couldn't see his own hands. "Sound off!" he croaked, his voice a raw whisper. A weak cough from the gunner's station. "Cole, I'm here. I think I swallowed a brick." Another, fainter cough from the loader's side. "Manny, holy shit, Manny's here." A terrified, trembling voice from the front. "Blevins, I'm okay. I think I peed. Are we dead? Is this what being dead is like?" "We're not dead," Avery gasped, wiping grit from his eyes. "We're buried." He forced himself to his commander's sight, but it was useless. The view was solid blackness. They were entombed. Slowly, as the dust began to settle inside the cabin, a faint light returned. A dim grey luminescence filtering through the still open loader's hatch, which was now a chimney leading up through a mountain of rubble. Cole, ever the gunner, was the first to look. He crawled over the breech of the main gun and peered up through the hatch. He stared for a long time. "Well?" Avery demanded, his patience gone. What do you see? Cole slipped back down, his face pale and caked in grime. He looked at Avery, his eyes wide. I see the sky, he said, his voice full of a strange, hollow wonder. And the juggernaut. Is it dead? Blevins asked, his voice a hopeful squeak. Cole shook his head slowly. No, he said, and the single word fell like a stone in the silent compartment. It's not dead, but it's not going anywhere either. He paused, trying to find the words. A steel beam, a big one, an I-beam. It went straight for its chest, pinned it to the ground. It's impaled, but it's still alive. It's trying to pull itself free. Sarge pinched his nose. Jesus fucking Christ.